I actually think he's got a future as a blindside flanker because we are short of big loose forwards. I think they average 40 or 41% of possession. That's not good enough for an All Black team. You've got to have at least 50%. It turns boys into men, but it turns men into better men. And I think that's one thing that rugby does, and especially the team factor,
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Murray Mexted joins us again, the All Black icon. I call him an All Black legend. That's because I grew up when Murray Mexted was playing for Wellington and playing for the All Blacks and played over 70 consecutive games for our country. Absolutely magnificent. Both as a player and then a commentator and then as an old friend and a guest on the podcast. Welcome back, mate.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
Always a very special day in New Zealand sport when the first All Blacks squad of the season gets named, and I want to talk to you about this, and we may have talked about it in the past, but the days of it getting announced and named on the radio when you were around compared to how it's actually done now, and the players of course get informed and then the newbies get invited along. But first and foremost, Mex, the experience, I bet that bit doesn't actually change for any young man in this country after playing rugby from the time he's a kid, parents going on the sideline, grandparents, friends and family, just that feeling you get when you know that you are now one of the most exclusive club members in New Zealand sport.
I think we got that feeling, Martin, this time they announced it because there were a couple of guys that got a big shock, didn't they? And one I think was by himself with his dog, and another one was with his partner. So you got a bit of a taste of it. But back in the day, it was all top secret stuff. There was coaches never spoke to you in advance. You didn't even know who the coaches were. In fact, sometimes when you met them the first time, they had a sort of a prescript, the way they were going to treat you, because they'd formed an opinion about you before they'd even met you, But I think it is a great moment, and I think some of the guys that spoke probably picked up on that. It only happens once. I mean, for me, I played a club game of rugby, and I was in the club rooms, and I looked at my watch, and it was a couple of minutes to 6, and the news was going to come out at 6 o'clock, obviously, and so I sneaked out to my PA Vauxhall parked in the car park, and the radio went. I'm not sure whether the engine would have started, but the radio went. It was one of those valve radios that takes a long time to come on, You got to let it warm up.
That's right.
People today wouldn't understand that, of course.
No.
But anyway, I sat there and I listened to the last of the news, and then the sports news, of course, and they announced the All Black team, and I was in it for the first time, which was very pleasing and satisfying. So I turned the radio off, went back inside and carried on like you normally do in a club rooms after a game of rugby. And then about 10 to 15 minutes later, the club captain announced, went up on the dais, the platform, the stage, whatever you want to call it, and announced that one of the players from the team today had been picked in the All Black team.
Wow.
And that's how it goes. But no, it's a one-off occasion. It's not repeated, and probably pretty significant in my life because I grew up next to a rugby field and a rugby club, so it's been in my background completely. Integral.
Life-changing moment for these kids, for these young men, isn't it, eh? Life-changing moment for all of you. Very proud indeed. All right, let's look at those loose forwards, mate.
I mean, I think they'll turn into better men. It turns boys into men, but turns men into better men. And I think that's one thing that rugby does, and and especially the team factor. It helps us work out that we've got to work with people. People who are different to what you are. And that's a great thing about the All Black team because the players come from all over the country, from completely different backgrounds. And, they're all ambitious. And at the moment with the game being professional, this is the top of the pops, isn't it? And once you make that level, then you've got a career ahead of you if you perform. And I think that's a challenge for everybody. No, I think it's a great moment, actually.
Let's look at these loose forwards then. He's only named 5, Razor, and he did, under questioning, say that yes, there's the possibility of maybe some of the some of the locks playing loose forward as well. So he kind of wants you to be skilled at both of those. Are you happy with just 5 loose forwards, given the fact 3 squads were named last year, and in each of those there was at least 6? 2 of them had 7 loose forwards named in those squads.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that actually, Martin. You did right. I mean, normally you would have 6, and sometimes we've even had 7. It's quite unusual, really, because there's 6 props. There's 6 props and there's plenty of hookers as well. So there's a real emphasis on the front row, which is interesting in itself. The fact that we've got 4 locks and 5 loosies, it is interesting. I think we're short in that area of the game, or perhaps he's wanting to boost the front row, because winning possession, one of those areas, the lifting is crucial. And I noticed that the new prop, Ollie, he's 6'5". Now,
yeah, he was a loose forward. And he's converted.
The same height, I think, as to Marty Williams. To have 2 6'5" props in your team is a real bonus, because it means with lifting you can lift the jumper higher. I mean, there's still no hiding the fact that we haven't got much in the way of height in the loose forwards. You do need at least 2 players in that back 3 that have the ability to win ball in the line-out. But it's not only not only line-outs but kickoffs. It's not only that area, it's opposition ball as well, which people seem to neglect or forget. You see every now and again, Ardie will be lifting the line-out, but it's a surprise lift. It's not a go-to lift, and so I think it's a really interesting thing. So I think there's probably room for another loose forward with a bit of height. I often think about that front row. The middle row and Vaa'i. He looks to me like he would be a great loose forward. I've said this before on your show, but
mind you, he's playing outstanding as a lock, Mex. I mean, he's the guy that's actually winning ball. And he's winning opposition ball. We saw him do that in the Super Rugby final as well. He's been doing it actually consistently since last year. So.
Yeah, that is correct. But you've got to look at who he's marking. And he's been marking Super Rugby players, and there's a lot of Super Rugby players playing lock that are no bigger than 196 or 197 or 198, which is where he is. You go to South Africa and you're marking guys who are 206 and 207 and 208. And that's where our yardstick has got to be South Africa and France and England. The teams that are the big teams that are hard to beat, the teams that have got real height and real ball winning capacity. And you will remember, because I reiterated several times, that we went to South Africa last year and we lost matches because we couldn't win the ball. And I think they averaged 40 or 41% of possession. That's not good enough for an All Black team. You've got to have at least 50%, but I'd be targeting 60% for All Black side. And
especially
it takes the referee out of the game. It does a whole lot of things. But at 40%, you are reliant on absolutely everything working, and having a completely neutral, when I say neutral referee, a referee that makes neutral decisions, not a neutral referee, because they're all pretty neutral, aren't they? And there's some decisions are better than others. But I think that takes those things out of play, and we've got to think about that, because we want to win. We don't want to come second.
Not against South Africa. These are 2 really important test matches, Mex. These are 2. These 2, yeah.
New players in the team. We want to win this thing. We don't want a bloody booby prize.
No. Hell no.
And I think that Razor's learned a lot. When I looked at that team, and I think he's got a couple of pretty savvy sort of co-selectors, hasn't he? I mean, Jason Ryan and Hansen, both of them, when I look at them and I hear them talk, I'm thinking there's a lot going on in their minds. It's not airhead stuff. They've given a lot of thought. They've considered, what do we need? And one of the decisions they came up with is we need tough guys. We need tough forwards. We need tough forwards that are playing 100% all the time. And then when I look at this forward pack that is announced, with the exception of maybe a couple who have been injured and aren't back into the flow yet, they've got some serious forwards with serious attitude. And I think I'm going to go back to Vaa'i because I think he's quite significant because I don't think against 2.06 locks he's going to be the answer. He's not going to win opposition ball against those boys. So I actually think he's got a future as a blindside flanker because we are short of big loose forwards. It's a funny thing, on Saturday I went and watched a game of club rugby in the Bay of Plenty, and I watched a player that came through Irons, and he came through and he was, at that stage, he was 6'5", I think, and he was only about 17 years of age. Now, I've told the story before about Ardie Savea when he came through at about 6'1" or something like that. This guy was a line-out forward all day long. And I said, where have they been playing you? And he said, lock. And of course, the answer is lock. He's 6'5" and he's 17 years of age. But when we profiled him during the period in the first week before we named the positions to play in the first game, we profiled him as a number 8, not as a lock. And he'd never played number 8 before. I played him at number 8, and he's got the potential to go the whole way. So I watched him play, and they were playing him lock, you see. And so I went up to him after the game and had to introduce myself because he couldn't remember me, but that was fine. And we had a bit of a yarn about it, and it was a really good yarn because he said that he'd sort of been pushed into that position, because he was so tall and there was a shortage of tall guys. But that doesn't mean to say it's the right position for you. And right. I still think he's a lock, and I think that's where we've got to be looking. I still think he's a number 8, and he will win great ball towards the rear of the line. He runs like a number 8. He doesn't run like a lock. So, that's a thing that these selectors, I think they're savvy enough to understand. But they've got a bit of a shortage in the aerial possession area, which means they've got to be great. Absolutely not good. They've got to be great at the breakdown. So who did they pick? They picked this guy, Karifi. And you've got to say he has played great rugby at breakdown. In this Super Rugby competition, he has been outstanding, just simply outstanding. And, Ardie Savea is also outstanding in that area of the game. So we've got 2 open side flankers who I think, and I'd like to think Jacobson would be an open side flanker as well, because I don't see him being big enough at 6 or 8 as far as aerial possession is concerned, and yet he's a tiger, and we want him on our team. He's tough. But I heard one of the selectors, or it might have been someone doing the interviewing, that he was being looked at as 6 and 8, whereas he's played 6, 7 and 8 consistently throughout the Super Rugby contest, and I'd like to see him also as an option at 7. And the other thing is Ardie Savea. He's proven a point. I think there's a lot of similarities between 7 and the 8 today, much more than there was in old days. Yeah. And I think Ardie's proven that he is really, really competent, more than competent. He's outstanding at 7 and 8, and he can move between the 2, and he's done that in the Super Rugby competition, hasn't he? So there's no reason why he can't be playing 8 and Karifi can be playing 7, or maybe even Jacobson at 7, I don't know. Let's see what happens. But I think they've been giving it a lot of thought. And it's going to get, they're going to be still trying these guys out. I'd love them to try Vaa'i as a blindside flanker. I think the standard of his rugby has improved out of sight in the last 12 months. They tried him once last year and he was a bit lost. Wasn't fair on him. But train him, get him used to playing in that number 6 jersey. And I think he could be, the next big line-out forward. Because it's not such a long time away when we had, Kano and McCaw and Reid. Now, Reid and Kano are, 6'4", 6'5", maybe Reid might have been a little bit more than 6'5", actually, So they're big boys, and they were both line-out forwards. That's not a long time away. But we need that. If we're going to win the next World Cup, we need that.
DSPN.